All right. Well, welcome this morning, and we're going to go over getting you familiarized with the blog templates. They are kind of a different thing in Showit. It's unique to Showit 5, so we didn't carry them, or it was not available in Showit Desktop for users that are transitioning. Showit 5 is the only one that directly connects with WordPress for a design aspect. And on the blog templates, it definitely works a little different. Like on the Showit pages, I know you're used to kind of, what you see is what you get. But with blogs, we have content that changes on a per page basis. And so that's why it's important to understand kind of how the blog designs work from a basic level and then kind of more advanced level and stuff. So we're going to cover the basics today. I'm going to jump over to one of my sites here and I'll start sharing my screen. 1 second. So let's share. All right. So there is my screen, and I've got my design up here, and I wanted to go over the basics of blog templates. So first, let's talk about how Showit connects with WordPress for this stuff, because that can be kind of a confusing thing for users that they don't actually blog within Showit. So let's see. And so let's go over just kind of the basics. So within Showit, you're actually, in a sense, building the WordPress theme. So you're building templates that become part of one theme together. And so from a basic level, the two templates that you have to have in order to have a functioning blog theme are initially what we just referred to as the blog, but WordPress terms you'll find under the template settings that's listed as post list. And so post list is kind of the standardized list of posts, whether you're viewing a blog page or whether or not you're viewing a category that lists all the posts of a category or all the posts of a tag. This post list would be the default layout that's going to be used, and then it has a repeating section in it to actually repeat based upon the number of posts that you assign actually on the WordPress side for how many posts are shown. So we're just simply defining the layout that then WordPress can use and repeat as many times as it needs on the layout. And so that's the first template that's required. The second template that is required is called the single post template. And so this post or this template is used to actually display the content of a single post. And so it typically will have, title and date, and sometimes the author. If you have multiple authors, you can have that, categories. But the biggest thing is the post content on the page is where the actual content from WordPress will actually get displayed in. And so that's the second template that's required. And you'll find, again, by selecting the name of the page, you'll find that template setting on the top right. And you can you'll find a number of other templates. And we're not going to cover a lot of that today, but I wanted to cover those first two there. And then I'll also talk about just the basics of 404 pages as well. So let's dive into how the blog page, or actually before we do that, I want to talk about how it's then carried over from Showit over to WordPress. So that doesn't happen until someone's site is ready to go live, meaning if they currently have a WordPress site, we need to first migrate their site over to Showit, and we have to install our Showit plugin before we can actually send the design over to the WordPress. So once that is done, just so you guys know, when you're ready to launch a site, under the site settings, you'll find a blog tab. And here once the blog has been set up on the Showit hosting, you'll be able to actually choose it right here and then hit save. And so that will save that there. And then when Showit publishes, it knows where to send the blog theme to. So I'm going to save that. All right. And then on the WordPress side, once someone has their site connected to Showit, under Appearance Themes, you'll find that the Showit theme is active, or it may not be active. So sometimes we will migrate it as is. If someone's not quite ready to roll, or we're not sure if you're ready to roll, we won't activate the theme yet. So if you ever have someone who says, oh, they migrated my site, but it's not yet live, just hop into their WordPress, go to Appearance Themes, and then activate the Showit theme so that it's there and available. You'll also find some additional settings under the Settings section in WordPress, down under Showit Settings. And so you guys will only see this top section. The rest of this is our administration type stuff. But a couple things to note. Showit pages. Do you want to display Showit pages with the WordPress, along with WordPress? Most cases, this is yes. If you have a blog under a separate domain, maybe blog.mydomain.com, you would probably want to uncheck that so that the Showit pages don't show up under that domain, but they would show up under the more standard domain, mydomain.com instead of blog.mydomain.com. There are options to use WordPress homepage instead of a Showit homepage. To do that, you would check this box, which would override the Showit homepage, and it would fall back to whatever settings you have under settings reading for WordPress. So typically you're going to want to set it to most recent posts being the homepage. And then blog domain, this is going to be fixed on a user's site. In this case today, I'm able to actually switch which designs my blog pulls from. So I'm going to put in my temporary one that I'm working with here. If you need to force generate, there is a generate theme button here, which will generate based upon the most recent version of the design. It'll actually tell you. So if I do it again here, it'll actually tell me that it's already been loaded into WordPress once, so that you know that you have the most recent version. In most cases, you're never going to need to use that button. I just wanted you to know that it's there and available. In most cases, you're going to be publishing directly from Showit, and as long as you have that setting under blog, under site settings defined, then you're cool. You just hit publish and it pushes the most recent version over to the blog. So that's the basics of how Showit takes those templates. It generates a theme on the WordPress side, and then you can activate it just like any other type of theme on WordPress. So let's dive into the design. Let's take a look at how my test blog looks here. I'm going to go to the blog page. And so we'll see here that I've got a ridiculously long title that I've got testing here, a date, the categories are automatically linked there, and then it's got just a snippet from the post and then a link to read more. It's also got the featured image. And then in this layout, I've got an alternating layout for the next post. And then it repeats as it works its way down. It repeats the layout alternating all the way down based on the number of posts I have in WordPress. So that's how it looks on that end. But you'll notice that, like in this case, it has a really long title. It shifted things down a little further down to fit the full title, whereas this one is just a single line, nice and short, and it didn't shift as much. So I want to go over kind of how to handle that in your layout and stuff. So let's take a look at the basics. So when we're on a blog page, there's two main things that I want to cover, which is canvas settings for WordPress and then placeholders for WordPress. So let's first take a look at canvases. So within the page, I've got a canvas here for my first layout. And on the right-hand side, you'll find on the WordPress templates that there's another setting under Canvas. And in this case, it's WordPress. And you've got static content in post loop, next post start, and post view lookup. The typical setting that you'll use is in post loop. So that's going to be kind of your default for a section that needs to load content from the post. And in this case, it's in a sense repeating in a loop. So that is the default one. So in this case, we've got the header, which is static. This little search area is static. And then this is in post loop, which is the repeating section. Now, in this case, we also have an alternating layout. So this one down here is actually set to next post start, which tells WordPress, at this point, I need you to start the content from the next post. So it knows when it gets to this layout, start the next set of posts. And then I do need to end my loop. So on the left-hand side here, you can see that there's a single 1 pixel canvas that just needs to end the loop. And so I just have it set to in post loop at the end. That only needs to happen if you have an alternating layout. If you don't have an alternating layout, then just a single in post loop will work just fine. So any questions on the canvas setting for in post loop? I know that can be a little confusing. There will be exceptions that I'll try and note throughout the broadcast. But next, let's talk about placeholders. So one big important thing about placeholders is you got to remember that content's going to change in a placeholder. So that's the biggest difference between like a standard Showit page and a blog page, is that these are placeholders where you may end up getting a short line or a long line of text, or in a post content, you're going to get a huge amount of content. So let's talk about how to set a placeholder. So in this case, this is just a standard text box. So you just throw it on the page. You set up both mobile and desktop layouts, standard text settings as you want them. And then to actually define it as a placeholder for WordPress, you'll find under text properties, which is the second setting down on the right, you'll find a WordPress placeholder setting and a bunch of placeholder options. So title, author, date, content, excerpt, comments, categories, just a bunch of different ones here. So this is where the setting is for setting those placeholders. In this case, it's a title. It's also good while you're in here to set, for SEO reasons, to set the text tag based upon how it's being used. If you have a big old post list like this, the titles are best done as a H2 tag. But then if you're on a single post, the title is best done as an H1, since it's the priority of that whole page. So that's how you would define a post title. And then similarly, you would set a placeholder for a date, and you'll find when you choose date, you'll have date format options available to you. So you can choose from the list there. And it doesn't change the content that's in there. So again, whatever you're plugging in there is just temporary. It's not going to be used in most cases. There's a couple exceptions, but in most cases, it's just going to get replaced. So you just kind of want to put some dummy, content in there, just that your users have an idea of how it's going to look when their live content is put there. So category links, you don't need to link anything here. Same with the post title, you don't need to link it. WordPress automatically handles the linking automatically for a title, for a category. So when it adds the categories in there, it links each one individually. Post excerpt is the, if you didn't define it in WordPress, which it can be defined by in a post by someone just typing out a little excerpt, this will grab the first section of the post. Typically the first 50 pages or 50 words will be the post excerpt. And so that's just kind of the default for WordPress. Now images, when you drop an image on a WordPress template, if it's inside of a in post loop or a next post loop, then it will give you the option under the image settings for checking the option of WordPress featured image. So WordPress featured image is there. And I'm just going to see. Sure I'm not missing questions here. So let's see here. Let's see how to have a category title. Okay, yep. So so for a category title, that's actually going to be a different type of template. So you would actually define you can, in a sense, copy this blog template, but it's actually going to be defined instead of as post list, it's actually going to be defined as a category template. And then at the top of that page, you can, one of the placeholder options is, where is it? Category title. So hope that helps answer that question. Jumping back into the blog list, same thing applies for the next section down here. It's got the same placeholders. I'll define the image placeholder there. And then for a link. So two things that aren't linked that we suggest you link to a post is the image. And so under the link, the click action settings, you can actually choose a link and you would choose type WordPress post and it'll automatically know which post to link it to based upon which canvas that it's in with all the other content. And then similarly for read more or open or whatever you want to use kind of as an action button, you can just set up a normal text box or a graphic or something and then just link it with click actions to WordPress post. So that's how you'll link those two objects. Again, the title doesn't need to be linked, and you'll find that when you select the title that there are no link options available anymore. Similarly with categories, those don't need to be linked at all either. So the only things would be things that like the image and then other stuff that's not defined as a placeholder. So on the mobile side, you can see or on desktop, there's alternating, but on the mobile side, the layouts are pretty similar here. And actually just decided to even not show the post excerpt, just to keep things short. So on the left-hand side, you can see that the post excerpt and the categories are hidden on mobile. That's definitely something that you can do to kind of trim down the mobile side and make it really quick to get to the post. Is trim out some of the content that you might show on desktop but have hidden on mobile. So that's how that works. Now at the bottom of the layout, and again, you don't have to have this second layout at all. So I do want to kind of show you, that you can actually do it with just one layout like this. And that's all you would need for a blog list. And it'll just repeat this section over and over and over again. Obviously, it would be repeated with the images all on the left-hand side, and the text and layouts would be exactly the same as opposed to the alternating. But I do want you to note from a basic level, you only need one canvas in there that actually has a layout. So if you want it all to be repeating the same, then that's all you have to do is just one. And when you get to the bottom of the post list, you're going to want a pagination section, which is in a sense the links to the other pages of posts. And so this is going to be a static content WordPress canvas. So again, because it's not repeating as part of that loop, we want it to be static at the bottom. It's not changing. And then placeholders are defined as older post link and newer post link. So that's going to be, again, the two placeholders that you'll use on the post list. This does change when you go to a single post. There's actually a different option for linking to the next post. These are, again, our newer posts, plural, and older posts, plural. And it will actually use the text that you type in here. So whatever you have typed in, this will remain exactly as it is when it's published on the blog. So any questions on that blog page? So perfect. All right. Cool. Well, let's jump to the next layout. Oh, here we go. Lexi, you do not need to repeat it as many times as you want. So you will only need one. If you just want one layout, you will only need this one canvas on the template. And then on the WordPress side, let me show you the setting. So on the WordPress side it's a standard WordPress setting under, I believe, settings reading. There's this blog pages show at most 8 posts or whatever. So you just set it there, and WordPress knows, because it's part of that post loop, to repeat it 8 times. Or if this is set to 10, then it would repeat that section 10 times. So that's definitely, that's a WordPress setting there. So I'll keep it basic on the Showit level. The more basic, the better, especially for users that want to eventually change a layout. It's definitely best to keep it basic level there. If you have additional ones, they will work. Obviously in this case, there's 2 that are alternating. So let's go to single post template. And let's talk about this, and I'm going to pull up a post so that we can kind of take a look at how it works. And then I'll jump back into some of the more advanced stuff like expanding and how things can kind of shift and grow and things like that. So, and that's where we'll probably get on this one. Where let's jump into, just from a basic level, this first one. All right, so you can see we've got our title, we've got date, we've got categories, and then we have post content. And this is all the content from WordPress. And then there's some extra plugins that kind of add like this little author box and things like that to it. But that's the basic level. So let's take a look at the design and see how we do that. So on the post title, or post single post here, it's actually best to separate a couple of the pieces into separate canvases so that they can fully kind of grow to their size without affecting other content. So in this case, we've got a really long title, and we don't want, as that grows, for it to start overlapping other stuff like this line and the date and things like that. So we want everything below it to start to shift downward. And so the easiest way to do that is to separate it into its own canvas. So in this case, the post title is right there. And then it is an in-post loop because it's pulling content from the post. And you can see how I've got it defined as a really wide area. So keep in mind that you want to define the total width of a placeholder, and then it'll wrap based upon that width. So if it gets to the end of that width, then it'll start wrapping text and create a second line down or additional lines as needed. So keep in mind, you don't want, to make it really small, because then it'll end up like growing, really long and skinny like this. So you want to make sure that you're actually defining a larger area for the post title, and keep things in alignment. So in this case, like it's aligned with like the width of the post content here. So that's how that is. Now it's in its own canvas. Now, one additional setting that is set on the canvas, it is post loop, but under the desktop and mobile settings, you'll find canvas type is set to grow with content. So it's actually a canvas setting. It's not the content itself. The placeholder will automatically grow by default, but you need to tell the canvas to now grow based upon the placeholder. So based upon that, it'll actually take the bottom edge of this canvas and it'll expand it downward as it needs. Now in this case, we've actually got this shape below the title. So how do we make sure that as the title grows, it doesn't overlap that line? Because we want to keep that line at the bottom of the title. So it's down here below it. So to do that in a canvas that grows, you can select an object and then go to size and position and you'll find some vertical locking options. So in this case, we want it to drag this object downward, and it'll drag it, it'll keep it the same distance that it is from the bottom of the canvas right now, which is only like a pixel or something off from the bottom of the canvas. It'll keep it that way if you choose this first locking option here to drag it down. This next one would actually drag just the bottom edge of the object down, which would actually, in a sense, stretch that line downward. So it would become more of a square rectangle, leaving the top edge where it is, but only dragging the bottom edge. And then this one would drag it both ways as it expands. So just to shift the whole thing downward, you're just going to choose that vertical locking option there. And then we jump into the next canvas. So as the title grows, it's going to do just what you see in Showit, which is shift things downwards. So you can see how it pushes all that downwards. So as this top title canvas grows on WordPress, it'll automatically shift all the content below it downward as well. So in this case, we've got the next canvas, again, set in post loop still. And then it has standard placeholders, post date, post categories, and then post content. Keeping in mind that the post content is going to grow, it's going to have a lot of content in there. This canvas is also set to grow with content on both desktop and mobile. You can see on our mobile layout, mobile layout should have the text. You always want to size things, even though we see some extra text hanging down below, you want to size it based to the bottom edge of the canvas. So it'll have this little distance here between the object and the edge of the canvas when it grows. Next, in this case, this design has a static content canvas for sharing. You'll find under click options, you'll find link social, and then you can choose share to Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, all those different ones. So that's how those are kind of intended to be used. Work great for blog posts. Can also be used on on any Showit page if you want to have a user share it and stuff. So yes, we are recording this, so this will be available. I'll post it in the group afterwards. Next, we get into comments. So comments are a little different than the other canvases. They actually are considered a static canvas. They are not in post loop. So the comments are going to be WordPress static content at the top, but they also will be grow with content because we don't know how much content is going to be in there. We want the canvas to actually grow based upon the amount of comments that are there. And then the placeholders, in this case, this first one is post comments. And so it just needs a single line there. It doesn't need a lot of space because the canvas, the content that's plugged into this will grow, and then the canvas will grow accordingly. So it doesn't have to be, big at all in the design. And similarly for the comments form, the placeholder is called comment form. It's in its own canvas, just so that the first one, comments, can grow, and then it pushes this comment form canvas down to the very bottom, and then it grows to fit the form because it's set to grow with content on both desktop and mobile. Keep in mind that setting for grow with content is unique to desktop or mobile. So if you want it to grow on both, you need to make sure it's set on both there. And so those are both static content. And then last static content canvas here is a pagination canvas. And we talked about how it was different from the blog page. The single post page uses different placeholders and it acts differently. So on a single post, you'll notice in the designs that are built into Showit, you'll find previous single post link and next single post link as the placeholders. So you're going to be looking for that single post in the title of those previous and next placeholders. And it also works a little differently in the sense that WordPress automatically replaces whatever you have here with the actual title of the previous or next post. So it actually takes the full title and plugs it into that spot. So you want to make sure to give it some space to grow. It's going to fit to the width of the object. So instead of just making it small like this, you want to make sure to to give it some space, obviously not overlapping this other one, but then it'll put the title in there, and then when it hits the width, then it's going to start growing downward. And so we do want this canvas to also be set to grow with content on desktop and mobile. Now on mobile, you'll notice that we decided to stack the titles or the links here. Now that can be an issue if we actually end up having a really long title on this top one, and it's going to build it all out, it's going to show it all, and it's going to start overlapping this next link. So here's where we get into some additional settings for how you can decide how content's displayed in a placeholder. So under the text settings, now I'm just on mobile, so this will act differently on desktop. If I don't affect it there, on mobile, we have overflow set to crop. And there's a couple other options. You can also set it to single line with ellipses, or display. The default is going to be to display everything. So let's take a look at how this actually renders if I have it set to display. Just so that, let me go another post downward here. And I'm going to make this skinny like a mobile would be, right? Oh, I got a little problem there. I got to fix that. That line must not be locked to bottom on mobile. So at the bottom of this is where the pagination links would be. So below post, oh, so here we go. Okay, so here's that really long title, and you can see it starts to overlap the other link there because it's set to display everything. So here's where you can do a couple things. I'm going to suggest that you actually end up cropping that text. And so to do that, it's best to do a little test here, put a couple of text in so that you kind of know how it would end up growing, and then set overflow to crop, and then adjust your text box, and you'll notice that it crops like a mask. So in Photoshop, if you were to mask something, you could mask it mid-line, something. It does the same thing here. It crops it exactly to the area of the text box. So you don't want it cropped with a half line of text here. That wouldn't be any good. So that's why it helps to have some text put in there initially, and then adjust your size of your text box, and then you can always clear that area out, that text out of there. And do the same thing for this previous one. So they're stacked, and then setting them overflow crop, make sure that the title just gets cropped after it goes beyond the text box area. On the desktop side, we want it to display because we've got more space. We're not having to stack them. We're able to put them next to each other, and they can grow downward. And this canvas is set to grow with content. So on the desktop layout, you can see that the titles, grew longer, and the canvas obviously grew with them to be able to fit them there. And so the question comes up sometimes: why does the title get plugged into the next and previous single post links? That's actually a default setting of WordPress, and it actually is there to help your SEO. So on a post page, you also then have links and a full title to that next or previous post, which Google will then find, oh, that title, and it'll know what that next page link is about, at least a basic idea. And so it just helps with SEO to have that. Yes, I believe it's Robin is in there, and we will have this available for replay. I'm going to post it on the event in Facebook so that you can watch it again. So those are the basics of a single post. Let's talk about a little bit more of that cropping of overflow. So we use it on the blog page here, and we use it because we have the title set. We want to show the full title, but we don't know how long exactly the excerpt is going to be, because the excerpt is 50 words or up to 50 words, but words vary in length. And so there's no definitive character number of characters that WordPress is going to output for an excerpt. So we want to be able to handle our layout, making sure that it doesn't, grow beyond what we have space for. And so in this case, the post excerpt is set to overflow crop. And similarly on mobile, on mobile, we don't even use it. We don't even show the excerpt. So we don't even have to worry about it on there. But similarly, you would want to do that on mobile if that were included on the mobile layout. So that's a case where you would want to use it. In this case, we're keeping it all in the canvas. Now, the title is going to grow. So title is going to grow, and we don't want to end up with that happening. Because the title is going to grow, but the other things aren't going to shift by default. So to avoid this, we're going to actually take every object that's below the title, anything that might get overlapped by a long title, and we're going to select it, and under size and position, we're going to lock it to the bottom. This canvas is set to grow with content so that as the canvas bottom edge grows further down, these objects we want to shift downward as well. So we're going to, all these objects that are below the title. Now we're not changing the title itself because we want it to continue to grow as it normally would, but all these objects below it are set with vertical locking. Now, if we were not to do that, and I'll do it here, I'll do it on the read more button. If we were not to have that locked, that object, anything that's not locked, is going to stay the same pixels from the top edge of that canvas, even as the canvas grows. So I'm going to go back here to my blog, do a quick refresh. Did it publish? No, maybe it's not wanting to refresh for me fast enough. But you would not want to get that that button staying there and other things moving downward on it. So we want to make sure all these objects that are below anything that grows, so anything below it, that are locked to the bottom. We don't have to worry if it's an object to the side of it because it won't get overlapped. Hopefully that makes sense. So good to use. And if you're designing for the design market, let us know because you can actually get a free designer test blog so that you can test content. You'll get the similar content that I've got here, which includes example posts that photographers might have, including some great ones like comments template that is going to give you just an example of how a ton of comments are going to end up building out and looking, and does your layout handle it? And then down here we get here's the comment form, and then on mobile testing, how does it look on mobile with comments and everything. So quick and easy to test mobile. Just give your browser make it skinny until it shifts. Sometimes you need to do a refresh when you switch between the skinny layout, like a mobile layout like this, and go to desktop. Sometimes things like sticky menus and things like that don't refresh when you make that kind of switch. But that's how you'll actually just do a quick test of mobile without having to pull it out on your mobile device. Although we do still suggest that everything. But so that's the basic there. All right. So we've got Robin has a question. Need to add CSS to further edit the comment section. Yes, you can do that. So Robin, under that will only affect the single post. So under single post, when the page is selected, so if you're selecting a canvas, you would just select the page up here and go to advanced settings. You'll find custom CSS options available. You can plug them in there. We just updated these edit screens so that if you click on one, it now actually opens up into a bigger screen, which makes it easier to edit some code. We know that was kind of difficult in these tiny little areas, so that's available there. And so you can't actually, you cannot edit any code directly. So you can add CSS code, you can add JavaScript custom head code, but you can't edit the actual template HTML because it's not actually, has to actually be rendered in a whole different way to become a theme. So, and like any Showit page, we don't offer direct editing of HTML. So we want to be what you see is what you get, and editing things can break the app. So we got to limit it a little bit. So let me talk about a couple things. Colby asked for ad space. So ad space can definitely be done. Sometimes it'll be done as a sidebar to a blog. And we've got, let me see if I can find a design that has a sidebar. I think. So Jasmine's blog. Okay, so Jasmine's blog has a sidebar. So to create a sidebar, you're going to want to make a really skinny canvas like this. It's just really skinny. It's just a few pixels tall. And everything will end up being further down the canvas, kind of hanging over the edge of that one, so that it overlaps all the others below it. But you need to make sure that this canvas that it actually is in, it has a higher stacking order, because if we don't have a higher stacking order, it wouldn't be shown below that canvas area. So you have to have it as a higher stacking order to bring it up above canvases that are below it. The other thing is make sure to make it a site canvas. So under the little canvas menu, you can convert to site canvas. And the reason being, it makes it a lot easier for editing, especially for a user. If you click edit sidebar, now you can actually come in here and actually just edit the sidebar directly. So Colby, the reason I brought up sidebars is that's a great place for advertisements. That's where a lot of people that have blogs put advertisements. And so what you're going to want to do to support advertisements is use a placeholder that is the sidebar placeholder. So I'm just going to drop a text box on the sidebar here, and we would add it. I'm going to add it to the bottom of the list here. And my area of viewing will grow as I make this grow, so that I can do that. So I'm going to define it as the area that I want there. And then under text properties, I'm going to set one of the sidebar options. So sidebar 1, 2, 3, you can choose any of those. Once you have that actually, the advertisements would have to be powered on the WordPress side with some kind of a plugin. But I can show you under Appearance Widgets. So if you find a plugin that supports advertisement that has its own widgets, you'll find widget sidebar 2, widget sidebar 3, and these correlate to that sidebar 1, 2, and 3 that Showit has. So you can set those placeholders in a sidebar. They could be at the bottom of a single post. They can be kind of wherever you want them to be. They can be placeholders as you want. Keep in mind that what you plug into them may vary based upon what you use. And so if you have an advertising plugin, a lot of times they support widgets. And so you would just, in a sense, like grab the advertising one and you would drag it, drop it into the sidebar, and then adjust any of the settings that it has. But that's how advertisements would probably be best supported, is with a sidebar placeholder in the template, and then actually handling the advertisements on the WordPress side. So that's that. I want to go to, let's see. Now, one thing I was going to cover quick was 404 pages, and we do have an article on this. So 404 pages, you're going to want to design 2. So the reason being that it will vary which ones used based upon how a user is hosting. So if they have a blog or they don't have a blog, you need to be able to support both scenarios. So if you add a 404 page, and it can be customized, designed however you want. On the Showit side, you just need to name it 404. It needs to be named exactly 404 up here. And then on the blog, you can name it whatever you want. It really doesn't matter. The only thing that does matter is that you actually set it as the template 404. So that will know when the theme is generated, and it generates a 404 template that WordPress knows which one to use when it has a 404 error there. So you can then, as an example, it should type in a random page link here. Boom, there it is. It gives me the 404 there as well. A couple other placeholder things on the blog, like we've got a search bar is a placeholder option. There is no enter button. There's no submit option. It just only works with an enter. It only works by pressing enter after you type in something. So that's why in here we put kind of an idea of search plus enter to kind of give them an idea of just type it out and press enter, which people are used to. If you go to Google, most people never press the button to search. Most people just type it and press enter. So it is kind of standard. And at this time, we just don't have an option for an actual like submit or search button and stuff. So Crystal, yes, you do need both a standard 404 page for a user that does not have blog hosting. This would be the one that would show for those types of users, or if they have a blog that's on a separate domain, like a subdomain, and you want the main page to still have a 404 error, you would want that here. And then on the blog page, you would want a template that is defined as the 404 template, so that WordPress knows what to use as a 404 page when it gets that kind of feedback and stuff. So great things. Something that I'm just going to throw a link in here. More advanced is the featured posts area. So we didn't really cover that. I'm not going to cover it today, but that's where you use the post view lookup. In a sense, it's searching your blog for posts. And here's a link for that as well. And then I'm going to schedule a more advanced blog, one that can kind of go over like side-by-side layouts and things like that. So we will cover some of that. For plugins, we do have some suggested plugins for users based upon their needs. Not necessary, just suggested. So things like we suggested the Yoast SEO plugin. There's one for Facebook optimization to make sure that Facebook always grabs the featured image. There's options for redirects, Pinterest, pin it icons on your images in a blog post, optimizing blog images. That's not, WordPress functions the same on Showit as another host. And so we don't really adjust your images in any way, so if you're uploading really large images, it may be beneficial to have a plugin that actually resizes them and makes them load faster on the blog. So we have one suggested there. And then, blocking spam comments. And if you want an author box, like I had on my blog here, if you have a blog user that has multiple authors, it's great to include an author box at the bottom of a blog post. And so there is one that's suggested on that page that has this little thing. It would have a kind of a paragraph description of the author and the image and everything. So that's that. We do have some incompatible plugins that we want you to know about. Most related post plugins are not compatible with our hosting for the reason that it actually puts a huge demand on the server. And so we support one, which is Jetpack related posts. So if you install Jetpack, which does require a free WordPress.com account, it's a free plugin to use. You can enable the related posts option on that. And that one actually does all of the processing on WordPress.com. And so it doesn't put that demand on our actual servers. And so that one works really well. So on that author box, I believe the image itself is under the users. So it would be under the WordPress user settings. I believe it only shows once that plugin is enabled. So let's see here. Yeah, so profile picture. Oops, maybe that can't be adjusted here. Oh yeah, sorry. Your profile. So I guess it by default pulls it from this Gravatar service, but there are actual other plugins that you can use to actually upload an author image and allow a user to edit it themselves. And so you can just do a quick search on WordPress for that type of a plugin for an author image there. So do we have plans for WooCommerce or Easy Digital Downloads? We actually, we do support Easy Digital Downloads at a basic level, meaning that it functions. So we don't necessarily offer full support from a support standpoint of Easy Digital Downloads, but it should function because they use short codes and they generate things really easily with that. WooCommerce, on the other hand, is a much bigger system and actually would require a lot of additional work on our end, enough to where at this point we're not planning to build support specifically for WooCommerce. I know that a lot of blog users use it. Unfortunately, it just puts a huge demand on a blog and a system that has, like ours, where you have to be able to design stuff with a drag and drop ease. Just doesn't work well with what WooCommerce wants to be able to function. So unfortunately, right now, WooCommerce does not actually work. It's listed on our incompatible plugins. Same thing with bbPress. Right now, we haven't had any users that have any luck with that. So a couple things, unfortunately, we just can't support every single plugin out there with WordPress. We definitely support a lot of them. So definitely try them and see if a plugin works. Our team is not going to know every plugin that does work. These are just some suggested ones based upon users asking us for certain functionality and us finding ones that have kind of worked in the past for previous users. So I hope that helps for answering that question. We definitely, from a shopping standpoint, we definitely also suggest Shopify. Shopify is a great option. And if you're wanting to just kind of embed it on your own site, the Shopify Lite, I think, is like $9 a month and works great to be able to embed products on a Showit page. And I think they may also support embedding them on WordPress pages, which brings me to one last thing. If you have WordPress pages, so under this, like in WordPress, if there's this pages section, and if a user wants to have a page, so if you're doing Easy Digital Downloads where they need actual pages built, you have to create a page template in order to load that content. And so there's another type of template in here. I just named the page, and it's using the WordPress page template on the right sidebar. And then it just has the basics of a title. So a canvas that's in post loop grows with content with the title. And then another canvas that's post content that also grows with content on both mobile and desktop. You can see it's super basic. You don't really need dates or comments or categories or any of those things on a page template because that stuff typically isn't used on pages. So that's one additional template that sometimes comes up that aren't always included in Showit designs. So maybe something in the future that we require, but right now not required for designers to include to sell a design, at least on our marketplace. So, I feel like I've talked a lot. Any additional questions? And feel free to unmute yourself and say hello. I'm sure additional questions will come up, so feel free, hit that little message icon in the bottom right of Showit and start a new conversation to connect with our team. As a designer, your messages are routed differently. So if it's coming from your actual designer account, it'll be routed into a separate group. And so typically Kylan or myself answer those. Sometimes some of our other team hops in to help as well. But we do want to let you guys know that we have some priority for you as designers. And also let us know when you're launching a client site. So if you have a scheduled date that you're actually planning to launch a site, let us know. Message us, give us details about their account, give us details about their current domain. Yeah, feel free to ask us to do a quick review of their current hosting to let us, so we can kind of tell you and say, hey, this looks like they've got some other stuff that's going to require some additional process for a migration to Showit, or it's super simple and easy. So definitely connect with us about that. Yeah. So, someone's going to unmute themselves.
Hi, it's Colby here from the
Hey.
Coop Market.
Hi, Colby.
Hey, I just wanted to say this has been so incredibly helpful.
Awesome.
Because I think there's just going and being able to read and seeing it live being done in front of you, and so I guess the only thing I wanted to kind of input here is more of this stuff as far as like I would kind of, especially for fellow designers, kind of like just some TIA or different animation and kind of cool stuff and advanced. Yes.
Sorry, Colby, you were cutting out there a little bit. It wasn't quite
sorry.
The last part.
Sorry, can you hear me? How's that? Is it any better?
Maybe.
I just wanted to know if we were going to be doing any more of these type of webinars on more kind of advanced features like animation, just some kind of cool advanced things that designers can be doing, and we could kind of do like a webinar on it.
Definitely. Yeah, we definitely can.
Okay, that would be great.
Work to do that. You specifically stated animation, so do you have an idea?
I mean, I guess as far as design goes, I'm a newer designer to Showit, and I guess some of the animation that I've seen, I've gone on and I've gone to other sites that have been done by kind of by Tonic and by a couple other different designers, and there's a couple things that I'll see and I'll go, oh, I love that. I'd love to know how they did that. And you guys, I mean, obviously kind of, you've been great at kind of like pointing me in the right direction, but I don't know, maybe we could just do something on the Facebook page where we kind of all just kind of say some advanced features we'd love to learn how to do better, or
definitely. Would you like to post on there and then have some others?
Yeah, I'll post on there today.
Perfect. So that would be great for us to kind of have an idea of what you're looking for, so we can kind of go out and try and find examples to point towards in a broadcast.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and unmute
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions that have come up as you're watching, trying things on your end? If you have not gotten used to the side-by-side editing, which I know is unique to Showit, I definitely want to encourage you to be editing in a side-by-side view like this as much as possible. I know sometimes there's not enough screen space to do that, but you can minimize. So if your screen is a little bit smaller, I found my big monitor works great. My laptop, I have to shrink things down. You can zoom out on a particular area. Be careful if you zoom too much. Sometimes Chrome will shift and make text a minimum size. So let me show you a little tip to resolve that, if I can find it. Should be under the menu here in Chrome, under Settings. And let's see if I can find it. It looks like they changed it under Advanced, I believe. Oh, maybe not. Maybe they changed it. I will have to try and figure out where they put that. They definitely changed it and stuff, but there was an option that actually would adjust the minimum. Oh, here we go. Okay. So it's under settings and then appearance and go to customize fonts. And then this minimum font size, which may be like up here by like a 9 or a 10, you want to drag it all the way to the left. So it's super tiny. And that will make sure that Chrome is not enforcing a font size that would conflict with your zoom. So if you were to zoom out really small, Chrome might still keep that font bigger, but with that minimum size smaller, then it won't be an issue. So good little thing there. Let's see. Does mobile now support justified text? Didn't for some reason. Justified text is supported on more than 2 lines, or sorry, with at least 2 lines of text. I don't believe there was any difference on mobile. I've never experienced that. So give it a try, Crystal. Justified, I know, doesn't necessarily justify if with a single line of text. So maybe that was your case. So we got Colby. The entire site was not filling up on our huge Mac desktop monitor. You guys fixed it for us, but would love to know if you could provide me some insight so I could fix myself in the future. You know, Colby, it's hard to know without the situation, so I'm not exactly sure what the situation was there. If it was a Showit desktop user, not a Showit 5 user, but a Showit desktop user, our older platform, those sites were initially designed on Flash, and so it's possible that when the Flash plugin is not enabled, which isn't used as much anymore by Chrome and the other plugins, that if it was disabled, that then it falls back to our kind of fallback HTML version, tablet version, which wouldn't necessarily scale like they would expect. So that's the only thing that comes to mind initially. Showit 5 sites are going to adjust. So let me take a look here. So Showit 5 sites by default will scale downward until they hit a mobile size. And then they will go upward until they hit 1200 pixels. And then it's going to start filling up with the background. So you'll see that it doesn't continue to scale and get bigger as I go wider, but it actually just gives me more space on the sides. So here's probably a good example on this galleries area. So that's about the 1200 mark, and then wider, it just fills in with the background of the canvas to make it wider. So hopefully that gives you an idea of like what's expected. It is expected to kind of anything outside of this design area. So if you put something on a page and it's, let's see, I'm going to add. Oops. I'm going to add something here. So I'll add the logo. And if you were to put it, some people like to try and throw things over here. If you were to do that, you're not going to necessarily see it. So some users may see it as their window provides, but the only things that are guaranteed to see are the things that are within that 1200 pixel width. And so if we're at 1200 pixels about there, you can see that I'm not seeing that logo that's on the side, but if my screen is wider, that starts to reveal it. So you don't want to put anything important past the edge. You don't want to put any text past the edge. You could definitely have things that are there that would maybe be shown, you know, if someone has a really large screen, it's going to be shown, but it shouldn't be anything important. So you should never be putting anything important behind the edge. So let's see here. Let's see. Oh, I guess that link's not working. I need permission. I just requested permission to take a look at that. My blog title on my tab is what I named it on WordPress, blog. So for example, Rebel Union blog, I'm fine with it saying blog, but wondering why it was reading no space in between. That may actually be something to handle via the Yoast plugin. Maybe the best way to handle that on the blog, to actually define like what the SEO title should be. And then blog. Why don't you message our team with more specifics on that one, Lexi, and we can take a look. So I think that'll be it for our broadcast today. Thanks for joining us. And I do hope to do more of these in the future. It's great to hear that it was helpful. And we can definitely look at probably diving initially into more advanced layouts for the blog. I know that people want to kind of make the blog look different and feel different and stuff. And so we just kind of covered the basic type of layout, but it's great to be able to do like side-by-side posts and a grid that creates a grid of posts on the blog post page. So that's definitely some things that we can do, and also covering like the featured section, which you can find a help article on our support page. But I know that a video tutorial would go a long way with helping you understand that as well. So I will look to schedule that in the future. But thanks for joining us today, and I'm going to end the broadcast now.